Please, human, help. My mom is trapped in the sky hunter's nest. She need help. Rain struck the jungle canopy like 1,000 shattering drums. The storm hadn't let up in 3 days, and by now, Darian Solon had memorized the rhythm of every gust and howl. Lightning flashed again closer this time, and in its pale blue flare, the silhouette of the downed survey pod loomed against a curtain of vines and bone-colored roots. He was the only survivor. The Viridra Prime system wasn't supposed to have storms this far north. The nav chart said nothing about lightning rivers or sky hunters, but it didn't matter now. The comms were fried, the shuttle torn in half during descent, and his emergency beacon kept shorting out every time the clouds muttered overhead. Darian tightened the black thermal weave across his shoulders and leaned against the warm trunk of a moss-lit tree. Even in the cold, the jungle glowed faintly, not bright, not friendly, just enough to see shadows moving when there shouldn't be any. The smell of ozone was thick tonight. He wasn't sure what woke him, a snap maybe, or the wrong kind of silence. But when he opened his eyes, she was there, small, still, watching. A girl no older than 10 or 11, standing just beyond the ring of scorched vines, her skin shimmering with dew and starlight. She didn't flinch from the storm, didn't blink when the sky split in half. Her eyes, huge, silver green with fractal lines like electricity branching inward, held him in place. "Human," she said, her voice dry, as if unused. "Please." Darian stood slowly, boots crunching on charred leaves. Hey, whoa, you shouldn't be out here. Where's your tribe? Are you hurt?" But she didn't move. She only swallowed hard, like the words tasted like stone. Then, finally, she whispered, "Please, human, help. My mom is trapped in the sky hunter's nest." And the storm screamed. Wind crashed through the upper trees, twisting the branches like writhing fingers. Darian rushed forward, but the girl had already turned, her body gliding more than walking, disappearing through a root tunnel only small shoulders could slip into. "No, wait," he called, crashing after her. The tunnel opened into a narrow ravine carved into the earth, where ancient trees leaned inward like silent judges. He followed her glowing footprints, pale trails that faded the moment he touched them, until he came to a sharp drop. Beyond it, nothing but mist and a long, long fall. She was gone. The next morning broke in a silence that made his ears ring. Darian scanned the ravine again. Nothing. No footprints, no pulse readings. His wristband could barely track temperature out here, let alone a biosign. He climbed back toward the crash site, heart heavier than his gear pack. She wasn't a hallucination. He'd seen hallucinations before, during the Arkan siege, when the fire line closed too tight and the gas got inside the masks. But this girl, she had begged. She had a name in her throat, something sacred. And Sky Hunter's Nest? That phrase hadn't come from his mind. It was real. He had to find her again. That evening, as the second storm rolled in, Darian built a signal fire from shock-dried bark and pulse rod flares. If the girl was out there, if she was watching, he needed her to see it. He waited until nightfall. Lightning stitched across the sky in crooked veins. A low, thunderous breath rolled across the jungle like a god turning in its sleep. And then, a whisper of movement behind him. He didn't turn right away, didn't speak, just waited, sensing her presence like a ripple through the air. And sure enough, she stepped from the tree line, her bare feet soundless on wet stone. Her eyes didn't glow this time. They shimmered, sad, afraid, old. "I didn't mean to wake the wind," she said softly. Darian slowly lowered himself to one knee, careful not to spook her. "You didn't. But I need to know what you meant last night." She looked away. "Your mom, trapped in the sky hunter's nest? What is that? A place? A beast? Something else?" She bit her lower lip. "It's high and breathing, and no one ever comes back. Then why would she go there?" "She was taken," the girl said, eyes filling fast. "But I saw her. She fought. She burned the air and made it scream. But then the nest opened its mouth and swallowed her." Darian's blood ran cold. "Do you have a name?" he asked gently. She hesitated. "Lyrian." He nodded. "I'm Darian." A gust howled through the valley, deep, guttural, almost alive. Lyrian flinched. "They're listening now," she whispered. "Who?" She raised a shaking finger toward the storm-filled sky. "The hunters." Later, inside the shelter of the old shuttle wreckage, Darian gave her a thermal wrap and a ration bar. She didn't eat, just stared at it like it might disappear. He studied her more closely now. Her skin had tiny bioluminescent trails beneath the surface, like rivers glowing in deep caves. Her hands were webbed lightly between the fingers. Not aquatic, something adapted for air density. She was alien, but not unfamiliar. "Where's your village, Lyrian?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer for a long time. Then, below the roots. "We sleep where the nest can't see, and they sent you to find help?" They said to forget her, that she made her choice. Darian frowned, but she didn't. "You said she was taken." Lyrian nodded. He leaned forward. "Then let's go bring her back." Her eyes widened, first in disbelief, then in a sudden, dangerous hope. "You would?" "I've got nothing better to do." "No human has ever entered the nest," she warned. He smirked. "I've done worse." She studied him for a moment, and then said the words he didn't know he'd been waiting for. "Then you have to see the bones." They left just before dawn. Lyrian led him through the hollows beneath the root bridges, past hanging gardens of breath vines and thorn fruit. The jungle changed color as they moved, richer, darker, until even sound seemed to vanish. And then they reached the clearing. It was a field of bones, not fossils, fresh, piled in spirals, sunken into the mud, wrapped in vines like offerings. Most were Veridran, thin-boned, long-skulled, but some were not. Darian froze when he saw the shape of a Terran shoulder plate. The old symbol of the Arkan offensive was scratched into the metal. It was his unit's emblem. "What is this place?" he asked, voice cracking. Lyrian whispered, "These are the nest marked." The ones it called. The ones who listened to the thunder and walked into the sky. Darian reached down and pulled the plate free. Burned into the metal, barely legible, were 5 letters. SOLEN. His own name. He dropped it like it burned. The sky began to glow. Not with sunlight, but with the opening of something vast and breathing above the clouds. Lightning coiled upward like offerings, pulled toward a central point, and far, far above them, the air rippled like a pupil widening in a giant eye. And in the center, a shadow moved, not flying, floating, watching, waiting. Some truths are carved not in words, but in scars. The village wasn't built, it was grown. Darian followed Lyrian through thick, vine-choked paths that curved downward into a living cathedral of roots and breath leaves. Trees older than memory had twisted into natural arches, their bark etched with symbols that shimmered when he passed. The further they went, the quieter the world became. No birds, no insects, no wind, just the hush of something watching from far, far above. The scent here was different too. Not rotting jungle, something colder, cleaner, like static before a lightning strike. Lyrian stopped beside a tree that had grown in the shape of a twisted spiral. "We're here," she whispered. Darian stepped through the last curtain of hanging moss and froze. The village of the Veridran ground dwellers was like nothing in any Terran file. Homes were suspended in hollowed root pods, glowing from within like fireflies trapped in amber. Walkways curved between trees without rope or metal, grown bridges wide enough for two people side by side, soft underfoot. Beneath it all flowed a river of mist. A few heads turned, eyes narrowed. He felt it instantly, the weight of their silence. Humans were not welcome here. Lyrian spoke to no one, no greetings, no calls of kin. She walked like she was half forgotten already. Darian followed her up a narrow path to a dome-shaped root structure. The inside was dim, warm, and carved with faint symbols. A single figure sat in the center, old, nearly skeletal, with skin like blackened bark and eyes like dull quartz. Lyrian knelt without a word. Darian stayed standing. The elder looked up slowly. "I thought your kind burned," she rasped. "Sometimes," Darian said, keeping his voice calm. "I'm not military." The elder's gaze dropped to his shoulder, to the faint impression where the Terran insignia used to be. She said nothing. "I'm here because of the nest," Darian added. The elder's eyes snapped to his. "No one is here because of the nest," she said. "We are here despite it." Lyrian broke in, her voice shaking. "I told him about my mother." The elder sighed, bones creaking. "And so the storm circles again." "She's still alive," Lyrian insisted. "He saw the sky open. He believes me." The old woman touched her temples, fingers trembling. "Belief is how the nest finds you. That's how it feeds." Darian took a step closer. "What is it?" The elder looked up. "It's not a creature. It's not a god. It is memory. Memory that's grown teeth." He frowned. "That's not an answer." "No," she agreed. "But neither was your war, and yet it came." She motioned for Lyrian to leave. The girl hesitated, and then slipped out silently. The elder stood with effort. Her back was warped from years of crouching, but her presence filled the space. "I was nest marked once," she said, "when I was not yet old." Darian tilted his head. "How do you know?" She turned her back. Across her spine, carved in raised ridges and dark burn scars, was a perfect spiral. Not a tattoo, not art. It was grown from her own flesh, like the jungle itself had claimed her. I went into the breath fog, like all the marked. The nest opened above me, and I heard the voice of someone I'd lost. It was not my father. It only sounded like him. Darian felt the cold crawl into his fingers. "What happened?" "I turned back," she whispered. "That's why I'm old. The others never returned." She turned toward him. You say you are not military. Then why does your name mark the grave circle? Darian blinked. What? The elder walked to a small recess in the root wall. She lifted a wooden panel, and beneath it lay a piece of charred whole metal, same as the one in the field of bones. She slid it across the floor with her foot. 5 years ago, another Terran crash. 4 men survived. 1 walked into the nest. She stared at him. He said his captain's name was Solon. Darian's chest tightened. He knelt and picked up the plate. It was scorched, melted on one edge. But the name was there, not his first name. Solon, his brother, Jacob. He staggered out into the jungle air, lungs fighting for breath. Jacob was here? His brother had vanished during the 4th Veridran conflict, declared KIA. No body, no confirmation. Darian had stopped praying years ago, but now he clenched the nameplate tighter. Lightning flickered above the mist. The nest had called Jacob too. Lyrian, he shouted. She stepped from the shadows, eyes wide. You saw it, didn't you? He nodded slowly. I'm going in. Her lips parted, unsure if it was relief or fear. I want to find your mother, but now I think she's not the only one in there. She stared at the nameplate. The nest takes what is lost, she said. He looked back at the village, at the way the people stared at the ground, at the way they never spoke above a whisper. No, he said, it offers what's lost, and that was far more dangerous. That night, the jungle pulsed with distant thunder. Darian sat beside the glowing stream near the base of the village, running his fingers through the mist, eyes fixed on the sky. Lyrian sat beside him, knees to her chest. I thought she was dead, she whispered. Your mom? She nodded. Until the storm started whispering her name. He looked over. The nest can speak? Not like us, she said. It speaks through want, through memory. It uses what you ache for. Darian's mouth felt dry. Why would it do that? She looked up at him, and for a moment she didn't look like a child. Because the ones who ache the most climb willingly. The nest doesn't need to hunt. It only needs you to remember. Dawn crept in, slow, gray, and heavy, as if even the sun feared to look down on what hid beneath the cloud line. Darian tightened the gear sling across his shoulder and checked the charge on his pulse scanner. Not because it worked well out here, but because the ritual steadied his hands. The closer they got to the storm veil, the more the air pressed against his skin like wet cloth. Lyrian walked silently ahead. No complaints, no questions, only purpose. The path she led him on wasn't a trail. It was more like a memory, winding through narrow rock corridors, across fragile moss bridges, and through groves of trees that bent unnaturally toward the sky, their bark slick with dew that hummed faintly when touched. Around midday, they reached a clearing that opened to a sheer rise of broken cliffside, and there it stood. A sky lure tower. Its spires were half collapsed, its core bleeding rust, but Darian knew the design. Terran military architecture, Class 5 used during the early colonization wars, designed to emit high-frequency harmonics to disorient airborne life forms. But this one hadn't been destroyed by time. It had been absorbed. Creeping vines, no, nerves, had wrapped themselves around the structure. The metal skin pulsed faintly beneath Darian's palm, as if still alive. He stepped closer, brushing aside a curled tendril, and found what he feared, a familiar insignia scorched into the side panel. Delta 4, Solon Unit Arc-Edge Division. His brother had been here. Why is this here? He asked, voice hoarse. Lyrian approached from behind, stepping carefully around the spiral-shaped growths blooming from the ground. My people didn't always fear the sky, she said. Long ago, before we forgot, we served it. Darian turned. Served it? She nodded, kneeling beside a faded mural etched into the rock behind the tower. Dusting it off revealed two figures, not human, standing beneath a great winged spiral. Beneath them, a gathering of people, heads bowed. We called them Ursai, Lyrian whispered. Not sky hunters. That word came later. What were they? Darian asked, crouching beside her. Memory spirits. Guardians of grief. They chose among us the ones who carried pain too deep for words. And when those chosen rose into the sky, they became wings. Wings? He echoed. Not flesh, not beast, something else. She looked away. They returned only in dreams. Darian stood, heart hammering. And your mother, Asari, she was chosen? She was born with the mark. Lyrian pulled her sleeve up, revealing a small spiral ridge on her forearm, same as the elder's scars, but gentler. So was I. Darian's throat tightened. What does it mean? It means, she said softly, the nest sees your sorrow and wants it. Later, as they moved past the tower and deeper into the cliffs, the terrain began to change. The air thinned, and mist leaked from the rocks themselves. Darian paused to check his wristband. No bio readings, no wind, no insects. And still, he kept seeing flashes, familiar ones. A flicker of red armor beneath a branch. The hum of a voice behind him that sounded like Lieutenant Kellen. A single boot print half swallowed by the fog, human and recent. He turned sharply. No one. The jungle was playing tricks on him. Darian, Lyrian said gently, placing a hand on his arm. It remembers you. He blinked. What? The nest, she said. It knows what you lost. And it speaks through what you can't let go. He tried to laugh, but it broke halfway. That's impossible. So it floats on lightning, she said, and kept walking. By dusk, they reached a narrow ridge overlooking the clouds. The wind here was strange, not cold, but charged. His skin tingled as if brushed by static or memory. Below them, a churning blanket of storm clouds, lightning flickering deep within like heartbeat pulses. Lyrian knelt and touched the ground. The breath path opens only when the storm sleeps. Darian looked at her. When does that happen? She stared at the sky. Tonight. As the light faded, the clouds began to shimmer, glowing softly with silver blue light. Then, slowly, impossibly, the storm parted like a curtain, revealing a path made not of land, but solidified mist, coiled like a spiral staircase leading upward. Darian swallowed. It was beautiful. And wrong. No structure should hold in the air like that. The nest had grown it. He took a step forward, then another. The mist held his weight. The world fell silent behind him. Lyrian's voice came, barely above the wind. Once we step onto the path, it sees us. Darian turned. Are you ready? She looked up, eyes filled with more than fear. There was longing there, too. Are you? They climbed in silence. The mist path wound upward, curving around columns of cloud, through bursts of wind and static. As they rose higher, the world below blurred, distant, forgotten, And then the air changed, softer, warmer. Darian reached the crest of the spiral path and saw it. The sky hunter's nest. It floated before them like a great, pulsing bloom of light, not mechanical, not organic, but something in between. Veins of living metal pulsed across its skin. Structures like wings or memories unfolded slowly across its surface, shimmering with moving images, flickers of faces, voices, half-spoken truths. He stepped closer, and the nest responded. A deep hum vibrated through the air, resonating in his chest. And then, a voice. Darian. He froze. The voice was warm, familiar, older. "Jacob," he whispered. He turned to Lyrian. Her face was pale. Her lips trembled. It started. Some mothers leave. Some are taken, and some become the walls around you. The mist path ended without warning. One moment, Darian and Lyrian were walking in spirals toward the heart of the storm. The next, their feet touched something alive. Not soft, not solid, not metal. The floor beneath them pulsed with warmth like muscle, exhaling slow breaths through vents along the curved walls. The nest wasn't just floating, it was breathing. Darian stared in awe. The structure around them shimmered with a faint bioluminescent glow, every surface threaded with filaments of light, like nerves beneath translucent skin. Strange patterns flickered briefly across the walls, rearranging every time they blinked. "I feel watched," he muttered. "You are," Lyrian whispered. Her voice trembled, her hand tightly gripping his sleeve. "It knows we're here now." They stepped forward. Gravity shifted. Not suddenly, but gradually, like memory itself bending. Darian felt his center of balance pull upward, then sideways. A floating bridge arched ahead of them, defying logic, curving against the storm sky that loomed outside the open ridges of the nest's living walls. It was beautiful and unnatural, like walking through the inside of a sleeping mind. He touched the wall, and the nest remembered. A flash, not in front of him, but inside. A memory not his own. Isari, younger, running through thick forest, laughing as her daughter tried to catch her. A hand reaching down to pluck a glowing spiral fruit. A low hum, calling from the sky. Darian jerked back, breath caught in his throat. "The nest holds her," he said aloud. Lyrian didn't respond, because she was staring straight ahead at a figure descending from the far end of the biomechanical corridor, barefoot and slow, with long silver-white hair fanning behind her like strands of lightning frozen in air. Isari. She moved with the calm of a god and the sorrow of a widow. Her skin bore the same bioluminescent webbing as Lyrian's, but brighter now, pulsing with the rhythm of the nest itself. Her eyes had no pupils anymore, just stormlight, endless and flickering. She wasn't trapped. She had become the nest. "Mother." Lyrian's voice cracked. Isari stopped 3 paces away, hands folded calmly in front of her. "You should not have come here, my child." Her voice was layered, not echoing, doubled. One tone soft, maternal, the other deep, ancient, like thunder buried in the floor. "We thought you were taken," Lyrian whispered. Isari tilted her head. "I was." Darian stepped forward, heart pounding. "Why didn't you come back?" Isari's gaze turned to him, sharp, knowing. "You are the one who carries regret. That makes you vulnerable. The nest smells it in you like blood." Darian gritted his teeth. I'm not here for myself. No, she said. You're here for something you think you can undo. The walls shimmered. Jacob's voice echoed. Don't wait for me, little brother. The squad fire team. Screaming as lightning swallowed them. A field of broken comms units spelling out Solon in burning metal. He gasped, stumbling. Lyrian caught his hand. Asari didn't blink. The nest feeds on unfinished grief. That is what gives it form. Then why you? Darian snapped. Why become part of it? Asari turned to her daughter. Because I was chosen, and I didn't resist. Lyrian's lip trembled. You said you would never leave me. I never did. Asari raised her hand, and the wall behind her parted like opening lungs, revealing a vast inner chamber lit by floating membranes of memory. There, Lyrian's face shimmered in the air, her as a baby, her first smile, her first fever, her sleeping face beneath a carved moonstone. I kept you here, Asari said, voice cracking faintly. Where no pain could find you. Lyrian stepped back, horrified. That's not living. No, Asari said softly. It's remembering. That's all this place is. The air thickened. The chamber beyond them pulsed with images, hundreds of them. Lost faces, dead kin, fallen comrades. Darian saw Kellen again, laughing. Saw his old pilot, Janess, holding up a trophy after their first successful rescue op. People long gone. The nest had them all. Come, Asari whispered, walking into the chamber. You can stay. Both of you. No pain, no storms, only memory. Lyrian didn't move. Darian stared at the shimmering faces. It was tempting. It was safe. He felt the ache in his chest, for his brother, for the war, for the ones he'd let down. If he stayed, he could see them again, live inside the best version of everything that was lost. But it would never change anything. He turned to Lyrian. We have to go. Her eyes filled with tears. She's here. I waited. My whole life. She's not your mother anymore. Asari paused. I am more than I was. Darian stepped between them. Then prove it. Let her go. The nest pulsed angrily. Lightning rippled through the walls. Gravity flipped again, but Darian held Lyrian tightly. Let her walk away, he said. Or you're just another storm. A long silence. Then, softly, Asari's stormlight eyes flickered. I can't follow. I know, Lyrian said, tears falling, but I can't stay here and not grow. The chamber trembled. Then, slowly, the floor beneath Lyrian lit up in a spiral of soft white, a path. A heartbeat later, the bridge extended behind them, leading out of the nest. The storm groaned in protest. The walls dimmed, but the door opened. Asari stood still, glowing, surrounded by her memories. You'll forget me, she whispered. No, Lyrian said. I'll remember for real, not like this. Their eyes met. Then the nest began to close. Darian grabbed her hand, and they ran. They reached the mist path as the spiral began to crumble behind them. Lightning licked the edges of the storm veil, and the winds howled with mourning. By the time their feet hit solid stone again, the nest had vanished, not collapsed, but withdrawn, as if sinking back into the clouds to sleep. Darian fell to his knees. Lyrian stood, silent, staring at the empty sky. Then, without a word, she raised her hand and pressed it against her chest, where her spiral mark still glowed faintly. I still feel her, she whispered. He nodded. You always will. But she's not here now. No, Darian said. But you are. The sky was still. For the first time since he'd crash-landed on Viridra Prime, Darian Solon stood beneath silence, no lightning, no breathless winds, no scream of thunder rolling across the cliffs, only stillness. The nest had vanished into the storm veil hours ago, and with it, a sorry. But she hadn't been taken. She had chosen to stay. They made camp on a jagged overlook beneath the high canopy. Lyrian hadn't spoken since their escape. Her spiral mark still glowed faintly against her collarbone, like a brand that wouldn't heal. She sat curled beside the heat stone, her arms wrapped around her knees, gaze lost in the sky. Darian wanted to say something, anything, but nothing felt right. What words could you offer a girl whose mother had become a god? At dawn, the wind returned, slow, mournful. That's when the voice came, not through the air, but through her. Lyrian's breath hitched, and her spine arched as a low harmonic tone vibrated across the stones. Darian turned, startled. Lyrian? But her voice had changed. It remembers us. Her head tilted back, and her eyes fluttered open, glowing pale white. Sorry? Darian asked, heart pounding. Her lips trembled. No, not just her. All of them. Lightning flashed far above, but it didn't strike. It circled. A wide, slow spiral, carving the clouds open like a vortex. And in its center, a glowing fissure began to bloom, not a tear in space, but in memory. A hole in the storm where the past bled through. Darian stood. The wind pushed back against him like breath. Lyrian's voice echoed, not doubled this time, but multiplied. The sky hunters are not beasts. We are sanctuaries. We are made of grief, and we choose our wings. Suddenly, Darian remembered the wreckage. Back when he first explored the jungle's edge, the broken sky lure device shaped like a beacon tower. He hadn't noticed it before, not truly, but he'd seen the insignia etched beneath the moss. Soulcom, Elite Strike Fire Unit 7, his old squad. The nest hadn't found him by accident. It had called him. He staggered back, bile rising in his throat. No, he muttered. No, I'm not. I didn't come here for this. The wind didn't care. Lyrian stood now, glowing faintly, staring into the widening spiral above. It wants you, she whispered. Why? He asked. Why me? Because you carry pain, she said. Enough to burn. Then the sky split. A projection, not a hologram, but a living image, descended through the storm spire. It shimmered and crackled, forming the shape of a massive winged figure woven from memory and lightning. It had no face, only echoes. Darian Solon, you buried your brother beneath a failed distress signal. You left soldiers behind. You remember the screams. We remember you. His knees hit the stone. He clutched his temples. I'm not your god. No, the voice said gently. But you are ready to become one. Lyrian screamed. The light around her flared, and from her back, two ethereal wing shapes unfurled. Not solid, but symbolic, flickers of stormlight shaped like grief. She was being pulled back. No, Darian shouted, grabbing her wrist. Let her go. A new voice emerged, softer, painfully familiar. Sorry. You don't understand. Human, she said. The nest doesn't destroy. It ascends. He looked up at her image, flickering like a dream above the fissure. Then why does your daughter feel like she lost you? Asari hesitated. She doesn't want a goddess, Darian shouted. She wants you, the one who laughed when she tripped over root vines, the one who sang her to sleep. That's the one you left behind. The storm faltered. Asari's form rippled. I remember those days, she whispered. Then come back to them. She won't be safe, Asari said. Without the nest, she'll feel everything. She's already feeling everything, Darian said, voice cracking, and she's doing it alone. The wings on Lyrian's back folded inward, the light dimmed, and slowly, the storm retracted. The spiral above shrank. The winds softened. The massive winged echo dissolved into threads of vapor. Lyrian collapsed against Darian, her pulse racing, sweat streaking down her temple. Her eyes were hers again. I didn't want it, she whispered. I just wanted to hold her one more time. He held her tightly. I know, he said, and you did, in your way. Later, as the last winds died and the veil began to drift apart, Asari's voice returned, quiet now, almost human. You're right, she said. I chose to become something greater, but I forgot that greater does not always mean better. Her image shimmered above them one last time, not divine now, not glowing, just a mother. A woman with tired eyes and a soft smile. Take her somewhere safe, Asari whispered. Tell her I loved her, even when I vanished. Lyrian reached out, but the image crumbled into light. And then the sky sealed itself. The storm nest was gone. They stood in silence for a long time. Then Lyrian whispered, she didn't fall. She rose too far. Darian nodded slowly. Even gods forget what it means to hold someone. She turned to him, her voice steady now. Will you help me find the path back? He offered his hand, always. What do you save, the soul that left or the body that remained? The wind returned with a scream, not the slow breath of yesterday's sorrow, but a raw, tearing cry, like grief made weather. The storm was back. But this time, it wasn't natural. The nest was breaking. Lyrian stood on the jagged ledge overlooking the valley, her braid whipping like a tether to something already slipping. Her eyes locked on the sky, where the once spiraling fissure had been. Now it pulsed, not opening, not closing, just trembling, like a heartbeat in panic. She's in pain, Lyrian whispered. Darian approached carefully, bootsteps crunching against fractured stone. The nest? She shook her head slowly. My mother. The nest, that biomechanical god form high above the storm canopy, was fracturing. Slivers of radiant shell peeled away from the floating colossus, lightning bleeding through its veins like ruptured capillaries. Whatever had bound it together, memories, emotion, sacrifice, was unraveling, and Asari was still inside. She's dying, Lyrian said, voice cracking. No, Darian said gently, she's changing. But if I pull her out now, maybe she'll be whole. He met her gaze. Or maybe you'll lose both versions. Lyrian stared back at the trembling sky, her hand clenched at her side. What would you do? Darian exhaled. What no one did for my brother. They climbed through the storm-veiled pillars of shattered stone, past half-lit sky lures and dead calm towers long swallowed by moss and bone. The nest loomed like a wounded god above them, half broken, still breathing. As they reached its rim, the structure shifted, reconfiguring like it recognized them. It let them in. Inside, the air felt colder, thinner. The storm's eye wasn't empty. It was filled with echoes. Images flickered along the walls, not visions, but memories fighting for space. A child's laugh, a scream in a burning corridor, a kiss never given, a mother holding her daughter before the choosing. Lyrian slowed, every step pulling her into 1,000 almosts and never agains. This is what she became, she whispered. A vessel for everyone's pain. And no one asked if she wanted that, Darian said. They found Asari near the core, the storm heart. Her body stood upright in the center of a glowing sphere, hair flowing like strands of living plasma, veins pulsing with lightning-veined memory. Her skin wasn't skin anymore. It shimmered like fractal crystal, too beautiful to be real. But her eyes were wrong, blank, open, seeing nothing. Mom. Lyrian stepped forward, trembling. Asari didn't move. She's still inside, Lyrian said. I can feel her. Darian stepped beside her, pulling out a signal rod from his belt. He'd repaired it days ago, a relic from his old squad. He carried Jacob's encoded memory from the wreck. He held it up. I've heard your voice before, he said softly. You sang through the comms, didn't you? Not words. Memory. You were reaching out. A pulse ran through the floor, not rejection, recognition. She tried to tell us. Lyrian breathed. Suddenly, the storm cracked again, violently. The nest began collapsing inward. Its walls rippled like muscle losing control. Intrusion detected. A new voice emerged, not Asari's, but the nest itself, emotionally unstable, compromised memory thread. Execute cleansing protocol. No, Darian growled. You don't get to erase her. Correction, you may replace her. The storm inside the nest took form, a towering humanoid figure woven from plasma and data threads. A mirror of Darian, but hollow-eyed. It approached. You feel grief, guilt. You are compatible. Darian stepped in front of Lyrian. I didn't climb this far to become you, then fall. The figure lunged. The impact sent him flying into a wall of seething light. Pain burst through his ribs, and memory flared. His brother's last scream, his squad's silence in the dark. The nest didn't fight with weapons. It fought with truth. Darian staggered upright. You think pain makes me yours? Pain is all you carry. No. He threw the signal rod. It clattered at Asari's feet. I carry her, and her daughter, and every memory I refuse to bury. The rod sparked, and Asari's body twitched. Lightning danced down her spine. Her eyes flickered. A whisper cracked through the chamber. Lyrian? Lyrian screamed, breaking from Darian's grip. She ran forward, grabbing her mother's hand, real or not. Asari blinked. Color returned to her irises. She looked at her daughter, and she remembered. The storm howled. The nest shuddered. Containment failed. Choice imminent. The walls opened like an iris. Two paths lit up. One led downward, back into the storm-scoured jungle. The other, upward, into the nest's core. Toward ascension, Darian turned to Asari. What do you want? She looked down at Lyrian. Tears formed, real ones. I want to be her mother again. The nest didn't scream. It wept. The ascension path shattered into dust, and the sanctuary collapsed, not in rage, but in release. The three of them ran, hand in hand. As the nest disintegrated behind them, its final light spiraled into the clouds, leaving only silence in its wake. When they reached the jungle's edge, the storm was gone. For the first time, Viridra Prime was still. Not every story ends with rescue. Some end with staying. At first light, the nest was gone. Only the curve of broken clouds remained, like a scar across the heavens. The great storm that had once ruled Viridra Prime had finally slept, and in its silence stood a girl, Lyrian. Her hair still crackled faintly with the storm's memory, but her eyes had changed. They no longer searched the sky. They looked forward, toward the ridge where the high path began, a route that led not home, but onward. Behind her, Darian Solon waited, his arms crossed, a half-burned jacket draped over his shoulder. His own wounds were healing, slow and quiet, like the land itself. Asari had not come back, not truly, not as a mother. When the nest collapsed, it didn't scream. It whispered, a single note unraveling into the air like a thread pulled loose from the sky. And from its core, a final memory had emerged, a song. It had begun as a hum, low, gentle, not meant for anyone but a child, resting against a heartbeat. Then words, walk the wind, little wing, where I end, let you begin. It played not from a speaker or a device, but from the storm itself, as if the sky itself remembered her, a lullaby encoded not in voice, but in presence. Lyrian had fallen to her knees when she heard it, not in despair, but in something older, acceptance. She never wanted to be a god. Lyrian had said later, she just didn't want to disappear. She didn't, Darian had told her. Not while you're still walking. Now, on the high path carved by ancient winds and broken technology, Lyrian walked with bare feet. Every step forward was a choice. There was no ceremony, no ending speech, just the rustle of leaves, the scent of ozone fading from her hair, and Darian walking beside her, not saying much, until she could have come with us, Lyrian murmured. Darian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked up at the open sky. Maybe she did. Lyrian tilted her head. She stayed behind, he continued, so you wouldn't have to. That was her choice. But this, he gestured toward the path, the horizon. This is yours. Lyrian swallowed. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. Good, he said. That means it's your life, not hers. Not the nest's, yours. They stopped near a ledge where the jungle fell away into miles of green mist. From this height, the world felt open. Lyrian sat down. Darian sat beside her. I used to think, he said quietly, that saving someone meant pulling them out of the fire, grabbing them before they fall, fixing what broke. He glanced at her. But sometimes, saving someone means not leaving. She looked at him. And sometimes you don't get saved back. No, he admitted. But that's not why you stay. Silence stretched between them. A good silence. One made of breath and presence, not loneliness. The sky was turning gold. Lyrian reached into the satchel Asari had left behind, a relic woven of nest fiber and memory thread. Inside, she found something strange, a single feather, black, iridescent, impossibly light. It wasn't from a bird, it was made of storm. She held it to her chest, not crying, just feeling. And Darian saw something in her shoulders, not defeat, not grief, resolve. She chose to become memory, Lyrian said. But I won't. Darian nodded. And then she looked up at him. Will you stay? He didn't answer right away, because once someone had asked him the same thing, long ago, on a burning station, right before everything fell apart. He had run then, chosen redemption over connection, the mission over the moment. But now, he looked at her, this strange storm-forged girl who had asked for help when no one else could hear her. He smiled. I already did. And so, as the sun rose higher, two figures walked the broken sky path. Not a soldier and a rescued girl, but something else. Two survivors who stayed. Below them, the jungle stirred, life returning. The pulse of a planet unchained from its storm. Somewhere, the last echoes of Isari's lullaby faded into wind. And high above, just for a moment, a shimmer passed through the clouds, a shape like wings. Smoke and memory, gone in a blink. But Lyrian saw it, and she didn't cry. She simply whispered, walk the wind, little wing. Where I end, let you begin. And then she walked on, toward a world that was finally hers, with someone who stayed,